Hi there, I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. Delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, which is entitled Defending Against Mass Exploitation Attacks. Your presenter today is Andrew Morris. He's founder and CEO of GreyNoise Intelligence. Now, before I turn this over to Andrew and bring him on stage, let me give you some background on our conversation today. It isn't just you. There has been a dramatic increase in the number of severe vulnerabilities in internet-facing enterprise software being massively exploited at scale. The amount of time between disclosure and exploitation of these vulnerabilities has been reduced to hours, leaving defenders with less time to react and to respond. While combating these attacks is challenging, there is both an art and a science to staying ahead of large exploitation events such as the recent Log4j. In this talk, we'll explore the root causes of mass exploitation attacks, insights into these attacks from operating a global sensor network, listening to internet-wide scan traffic over the past 4 years, and an emerging new security strategy based on fast flux blocking of scanner IP addresses. Let me start by giving you some information about Information Security Media Group. We've been around for 16 years now. We're a global education and intelligence firm. Our headquarters is in Princeton, New Jersey in the US. You may know us, of course, by one or more of our 34 media properties. These include Bank Info Security, Gov Info Security, and Data Breach Today. In all, we reach an audience of over 1 million security leaders globally. We give them a daily diet of news, analysis, research, events, and educational programs exactly like this one. A few notes of housekeeping. If you have any questions for Andrew anytime during this session, you can submit them via the chat window on your screen. I won't be able to get to every question necessarily, but for those that we can't answer in the course of this session, we will get responses back to you via email. If you should encounter any technical issues while viewing today's webinar, please take down the email address on your screen. If you write to webinars@ismg.io, we do have support staff standing by to help. Also, a reminder, today's webinar is copyrighted material. It's meant for today's session and individual study purposes only. If you'd like to use any of the information presented today, or if you're looking for customized training materials, please contact us. I'm delighted to introduce our sponsor, GreyNoise. GreyNoise is the source for understanding internet noise. They collect, analyze, and label data on IPs that scan the internet and saturate security tools with noise. This unique perspective helps an analyst waste less time on irrelevant or harmless activity and spend more time focused on targeted and emerging threats. GreyNoise is trusted by Global 2000 enterprises, governments, top security vendors, and tens of thousands of threat researchers. To learn more, please visit greynoise.io. And now let's meet our speaker, Andrew Morris. He's founder and CEO of GreyNoise, which of course is a cyber security company based in Washington, D.C., and it does analyze internet scanning traffic to separate threats from background noise. Andrew has a strong background in offensive cyber operations and security research. Before starting GreyNoise, he worked in R&D at Endgame, security engineering at Intrepidus Group, and penetration testing at Knowledge Consulting Group. With that, let's bring on to the virtual stage Andrew Morris. Andrew, welcome.
Hey, Tom, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you guys about everything related to GreyNoise, mass exploitation, and all the kinds of things that we've learned in the years that we've been running our operation at GreyNoise.
Well, so much to talk about here. Let's start here for context, Andrew. Internet background exploitation. What exactly is the problem?
So when we discuss internet background exploitation, what we're referring to is the shift in positioning or the shift in dynamic from one bad guy targeting one network and trying to attack in lots of different ways to a bad guy having one or two ways that they're trying to attack a network, but attacking all networks on the internet. And so instead of instead of having to defend against a multitude of things from one bad guy, you're talking about having to defend from one or more bad guys trying one thing, but broadly sweeping across the internet. that's kind of what the term refers to. The metaphor would obviously be like a criminal walking down a row of cars, attempting to open the doors to as many of those cars as possible, but not doing anything advanced, not busting out the Jimmy, or not any kind of complicated locksmithing attacks. Just trying to open the door to every single door that they walk past. And maybe they find some that are open, and if they do, they quickly pull out the contents and they just keep moving. The technical root cause of mass exploitation being successful is probably a multitude of different things. I would say the largest factors to increases in scan and exploit, or mass exploitation, or internet background exploitation, however you want to phrase it, the probably key things that have led to the key root causes are advances in vulnerability research from the offensive security side of the house. So basically, it used to be really hard to find exploits in enterprise software, and now there's both more enterprise software, so the attack surface is larger, and bad guys have gotten better at it. And so what that means is that finding exploits or finding vulnerabilities in software is easier, and there's more of it. The second root cause is that there have been advances in mass scanning and mass exploitation techniques. So what that means is that whereas 10 years ago, it would have taken you hours and hours and hours to exploit the internet or scan the internet, today it only takes you a couple minutes using things like mass scan, ZMAP, and then a lot of these online services like Shodan and Census that help you do all the targeting. So short answer long, those components are what have actually driven mass exploitation.
So many follow-up questions, Andrew. Let's start here. How has this problem only grown? It seems to me, if we go back to your cars parked on the street analogy, over the past 2 years, we've parked an awful lot more vehicles out there.
So the problem has grown in a number of different ways. The attack surface has increased, so there are simply more cars. The amount of software that we're running in the attack surface of each of those cars has grown. Each of the cars has more doors. And bad guys have come up with lots of different ways to open up those car doors. Those are the big reasons why this has increased. I would say, finally, the amount of vulnerabilities that are being publicly disclosed in widely deployed software has increased pretty drastically, especially over the last 3 years. I think the end of 2019 was when we started to see like a pretty large spike of this.
I ask you what's at risk, but it's almost easier to ask what's not at risk.
So I don't have any interest in just arbitrarily scaring the crap out of people. But what I would say is software that runs on the perimeter. What we're talking about here at GreyNoise is specifically vulnerabilities in internet-facing, commonly deployed enterprise software. And the vulnerability types that we're talking about are almost exclusively remote code execution. So there are, hundreds of vulnerabilities are disclosed every week, and many vulnerabilities are exploited at scale every week. But the ones that people really need to be concerned about, that the listener really needs to be concerned about, are vulnerabilities in common enterprise software, that is things like Exchange or Apache or Nginx or any software that's super common. Vulnerabilities, remote code execution vulnerabilities that are unauthenticated in enterprise software that is widely deployed and frequently operated on the perimeter. Those are the kinds of software that are mostly targets of mass exploitation attempts, such as Log4j. That was kind of like a perfect storm. So those are the kinds of things that I would say the security community is the most concerned about.
I like that you mentioned Log4j, because my follow-up was going to be who experiences the pain. And I know for a fact that anyone that worked in security lost Christmas last year because of Log4j.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the pain manifests to a lot of different security companies, or a lot of different, it's not even specifically security companies. the pain manifests to security practitioners and technology companies in a lot of different ways. Obviously, first and foremost, defenders, cyber first responders, DFIR professionals, security analysts, SOC analysts, sysadmins, people who are in charge of vulnerability and patch management. Those were the people first and foremost that were really affected by Log4j specifically, but really any mass exploitation attempt. Log4j was just a really bad one. Outside of them, security companies, they had a lot of egg on their face for not being able to properly detect and remediate because it was unclear how exactly to do that and whether or not people were vulnerable. It was a moving target. The hosting companies that were actually that were hosting the networks that were attempting to exploit people at scale, those companies were feeling a lot of pain because they were trying to kind of also prevent people from exploiting from their networks, et cetera. And yeah, threat intelligence companies for being just totally in the dark about this. So it really, because it happens very quickly. And so those are just a few that really experience a lot of the pain.
Andrew, I'd love for you to talk about why this is a problem that's so hard to solve. And what immediately comes to mind is, of course, you can't patch everything. And you can only patch and you can only remediate what you can see, right?
Yeah, mass exploitation is really difficult to solve for a multitude of reasons. One, it's big and complicated. Two, it's an adversarial problem, which is to say it's not like a science problem where nature just hangs out and waits for you to come up with the problem. The beings on the other side have a vested interest in you, the defender, not being successful. So it's adversarial, it's sentient. The big reasons why this is hard is that there are many vulnerabilities. There are attack surfaces increasing drastically. The patches aren't always successful right away. The vulnerabilities are coming out much more quickly. Security products are not able to keep up with each different kind of specific Log4j type mass exploitation attempt. There are various different reasons why it's difficult, but at the end of the day, a lot of it has to do with usually there is just no way around solving the problem outside of patching, and doing that very quickly is difficult, especially when you have to maintain uptime and when people are attempting to exploit the vulnerability kind of immediately and you have to buy yourself time. So that's one of the reasons why it's hard. There's just no time.
Andrew, we've talked about Log4j intermittently throughout this conversation. If you were to take a step back, what are some of your observations about Apache and Log4Shell?
Log4j was a really interesting example of mass exploitation because it was not the first and it will absolutely not be the last. We've actually seen other mass exploitation attacks happen against the internet since then. The reason that it was interesting is because the ease of exploitation was just dead simple. It was really easy to exploit, and the details for exploiting it were made public very quickly, within days of the vulnerability being disclosed, and very, very, very shortly after a patch had been made available. So that was first and foremost. The second was it was a classic supply chain attack in that it wasn't even in one piece of software. It was in a piece of software that was included in other software. It was in a library that tons of other vulnerabilities, that other software took advantage of, the Log4j library, right? So that was the second reason why it was really difficult. The third reason was that it was really hard to detect on the wire at a technical level. It was possible to obfuscate on the wire. So you can make the exploit payload look very different in lots of different ways. That made it really painful. I mean, I'm not even going to add the fact that everything got really bad on a Friday, or that the first wave of exploitation happened exclusively via Tor nodes, which is something we noticed at GreyNoise. That makes things really difficult when people are exploiting you at scale through Tor. So they're coming from hundreds of different places. Makes it very, very, very challenging. So that was just several of the reasons why it was so difficult.
I come back to what you said. It's not the last. We've seen more and we're going to see more. And this is a good time to develop some muscle memory. Andrew, let's talk a bit about GreyNoise. How are you helping your customers tackle a number of challenges? Let's start here. How are you helping them tackle the challenge of speed?
So an important part of the problem, and one of the things that we hear from our customers very frequently is we can't respond fast enough, and our vendors are not giving us something useful quickly enough. And so as a result, we've prioritized delivering an insight to our users and to our customers within a timely fashion so that it is received, the information is received while it is still useful, while it's still necessary. And in order to do that, we have a bunch of near real-time data sources or data pipelines in our backend that allow us to get data from our collection infrastructure to analyzed and tagged, shipped out to all of our different users and customers as quickly as humanly possible, within minutes to hours tops. And that's something that we find many other security vendors are not able to do. A lot of the time, other security vendors will take maybe a day, 2 days to get an insight back over to their customers. We try to get it over in minutes to an hour tops. And so that's one of the reasons why, that's one of the things that we really prioritize for our customers.
Another big challenge, automation. A lot of these attacks are coming through automation now.
So we don't think that it's sufficient for us to give our customers raw information or raw data that they are going to have to parse with a human in order to make sense. A computer has to be making a decision based on something that you're providing as a security company, right? Someone else has to be able to automate around it. And so to allow our customers to automate better, one of the things that we do is we label all of our data with consistent labels, and we're very clear to write which vulnerabilities we see people exploiting, whether it's good or bad, the IP address is good or bad, all of these different features in our data services that allow people to take advantage of automation to make decisions based on our data. So that's a really big component of it. The way that we do that, by the way, is we actually use a tremendous amount of automation on our side, on the collection side, to actually apply labels onto data at very vast scale and disseminate that data back out to our users and to our customers very quickly.
There's another key word, scale. How are you helping your customers deal with the massive scale of these attacks?
So we think about scale a lot in our collection backend, and we think about scale a lot with our larger customers that are having to deploy blocks or remediate not on a dozen machines, but on perhaps hundreds of thousands of machines that are out running on the internet. Scale is a first-class citizen at GreyNoise. If something can't run at the scale that our major customers are going to have, or at internet scale across hundreds of thousands of systems, then it's not going to work for us. So that has to be a first-class citizen for us in the way that we think about everything. We use modern technologies under the hood that are more than capable of achieving the levels of scale that our customers need to be able to use to see value from our data services and from our products. We also do not provide any solutions to problems that will not scale with the customer. So everything that we do has to be able to apply to whatever the size is that they're seeing and that they're experiencing. The way that we think about scale at GreyNoise is very much that unless we can do something across the vast majority of the internet and really scale up that way, we're not going to really think about it very much. It means that we're not going to undertake that problem.
What are some of the other roadblocks we haven't talked about? I would think just plain human resources would be one. Organizations don't have the resources to do what you can do for them.
Yeah, that's a big part of the value that we have here, is that a lot of where our value originates as a company is any place where we believe things are being replicated or work is being replicated across organizations. And thus, unfortunately, that means that time is being wasted. And so what we find at GreyNoise is any place where our users or where our customers are redoing the same things many times, that's a place where we can actually bring them a lot of value. If we can automate a lot of that, we can hand over automated solutions to that, to our customers, then they will have to deploy less human capital less analyst resources to tackle problems, and they will have more availability to focus on the things that really matter to them that only a human can address. And that's really, really important. So you're exactly right, Tom. Time and human hours are the number one, that's the number one resource that our customers have. And so we want to try to make that time go further for our customers by telling them all the things that they don't need to worry about, by helping them get answers on the things that they're looking at much more quickly, by blocking off entire swaths of attacks that are hitting them that are very low value and that are eating up a lot of their time. Those are the things that we want to prevent from making it to our customers' analyst eyeballs, because then they have more time to look at everything else. So you're spot on.
Andrew, we packed a lot into a little bit of time here. It's like a conversation concentrate. What closing recommendations do you have for our audience based on what we've talked about here today?
The most important thing as it relates to mass exploitation is, number one, to know yourself, to know what technology you're running, to know what versions of it you're running, to know what software you're running, what your tech stack is, where it's running, etc. That's first and foremost. You need to know that. The second piece of advice that I have for you is that there are a few operations you're going to have to do frequently: blocking IPs, taking things offline, cycling devices, grabbing images, blocking domains, etc. Make sure you can do those very, very, very quickly. And then the third piece of advice that I have for you is be able to ensure that you're never in a position where you absolutely have to rely on any one security technology to have the answer or to be able to do something that you need it to do. You're almost certainly going to have to be able to, when the situation gets tough, you're almost always going to have to be able to take things offline, make block decisions, enumerate the technologies that are running in your network, and perhaps hunt or block based on what you find without any one technology. So make sure that your security team is always able to do that very quickly. Those are the things that I would recommend first and foremost for everybody. Know what you have, be able to get bad out quickly, and don't rely on any one of your security products. Really, really make sure that you're asking for a lot from your security vendors, but don't rely on them too terribly much for absolutely every circumstance, because just like we found with Log4j, sometimes you're just on your own and you have to figure those things out yourself. So just expect that.
Very good. Andrew, I appreciate your time and insight today. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom.
Of course, I'm grateful to our audience as well. Thank you for taking time out of your day to attend this session. I do trust that today's discussion provided some excellent new insights to enable you and your organization to be even better prepared to tackle these security challenges going forward. I look forward to seeing you again at one of our upcoming events. Until then, for Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thank you so much for your time and attention today.